Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to create a colorway starting with an inspiration photo. And specifically this beautiful photo of, I think, a sunrise on a marsh, where we have our sky with some brilliant soft blues, pinks, and a bit of purple. And then we have our greenery with a bunch of different greens and a few hints of like a pink in there. And I'm gonna pull colors from this image and then play with them to come up with a plan to create a colorway on yarn. I'm about to show you my planning process, which I filmed with a screen recording, and I think I filmed voiceovers that day we were getting our water heater replaced. When I'm starting with an inspiration photo, I like to bring it into some kind of software and use a color picker, a pixel color picker, to pull various colors that I see in the photo. Now, obviously, this isn't all the colors I see, but I'm going for the things that sort of fit what I see in my brain. And in this marshy photo, we have both the dark colors of the greenery and then the lighter, more pastel and bright colors of the sky and the marsh. And so after I pulled a bunch of colors, I did sort everything into sort of the darker colors down along the right, and along the left side, those brighter colors of the sky. Now, we absolutely could go into this project and focus just on the sky or just on the greenery. I'm going to go for both, I think, today, and try to bring all that in, but I think it'll be fun. I think that the Dharma color picker that I used to use is gone, which is a bummer, but we can now sort by color, which is handy. It's not as handy as that tool that I used to use. I had to go about this the old-fashioned way and just take screenshots of the colors I wanted to pull. I brought the colors into paint, and eventually you'll notice that I completely forgot a pink in my palette, so I went and grabbed one. And I started playing around with different ideas. Like, I could do the darker colors, maybe with resists, and add in the brighter colors around later on. Or I could do something that is sort of half the sky colors and half more of the foliage. But then I thought, what if I take those like sky colors and let that be the background color? So dye the entire thing with those blues and pinks. And then, maybe doing something with liquid dyes, there'll be some blending. And then I bring in powders and the other colors for the foliage. And so we could get less of those lighter colors showing through in the end, but if I focus mostly on the moss with maybe some hints of the other colors, just lean in and see what's happening there. And I think that's what I'm leaning towards now. I don't always go through the effort of playing around with everything in paint like this, but if you aren't sure where you want to start, going through all this process digitally can be really helpful. And I find that even just like picking and pulling colors gives me a lot of inspiration and makes it easier. And now as I go to actually pull acid dyes out of my office upstairs to use for the project, I don't think I'm going to pull all of the lighter colors that I saw in there. I'm going to use the 4 deeper colors that I pulled, or at least have them on hand. But I think with the lighter colors, I might just pick one of the blues, the pink, and maybe one of the purples to use. But maybe I'll bring them all down just so I have them on hand in case I want them. These are the crayons that I pulled from my tools that we'll use today. Now I'm going to set aside the greenery colors for now, and I'm going to focus on these lighter colors. I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, and took a little bit of our Valentine Blush, Lilac, Baby Bule Eyes, and Alpine Blue, and dissolved it in some tap water. I may be diluting these colors further as we go and dye the first layer of our yarn, but I decided to start with the colors in liquid form because since I want something more pastel for the backdrop, having them diluted will be easier for me to get those pastels versus starting with dry dye powder and going directly onto the yarn, where I could end up with something that is brighter than what I'm going for. I put some of each of the colors on a paper towel, and just look at how pretty the lilac is and the breaking in there. Oh man, I'm not gonna want very much of it, but the hue is perfect. I do think that the colors are probably a little more saturated than what I'm going to need, but I mean, let's start playing and seeing where we go. I have our 300 grams of yarn right here. It is pretty they're pretty saturated, but I am not yet adding water, more water or acid, because I want to kind of add the dyes in and then add acid. And I think we're going to be adding the dyes with a bunch of water. And so that is my plan. And I do have a bonus skein of Stroll off to the side. Still dry, but I'll use it as a yarn mop. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add some water into a container. Add some of our blue dye. And then I'm going to sort of pour it on. And see, it's not going to be all perfectly in one area. I may do that a little bit. Let's add a little bit less, but I wanted to have sort of there we go, a dyeing by feel, splashing these colors on a little bit in a way to sort of mimic the sky. And let's do the other blue. I think this is the Alpine Blue this time. I'm not even like stirring that much, but I'm just splashing the colors on to give us dimension. I don't know how much these are going to be going through, which is okay. And actually I can take the spoon, stir it in. Now Valentine's Blush is a lighter color overall anyway. Okay, but see, there we go. When they layer, we get a little bit of that purple. So I may not need to bring any of the lilac over, but we'll be layering our deeper colors on top of all this as we go. And yeah, I guess I'm going to carry on creating this soft blues and purples backdrop. But before we continue, I'm going to flip the yarn over. And it is, I think, okay if we end up with a little bit of white on the backdrop, but you know, the goal, and things, even without me adding acid, things are striking pretty quickly. My tap water is slightly acidic, so I'm just gonna kind of carry on like this, focusing on the blues and the pink until I'm happy with the coverage. And then we'll decide if we need a little more purple, but maybe not. The key that I want to make sure I do is to build the colors up slowly, also increasing the volume of water here in the pan. And so it's okay if I start with a little bit less color than I think I want, because we can always increase it to build up that color. Once I started to get really happy with the color coverage, I added 3 tablespoons of white vinegar into the pan, worked it through, and then layered on a little bit more color just to build it up. But I'm loving the way that this is turning out. I am so happy with how this turned out that it's gonna be a shame to keep going. But at the same time, I know I'm on the right track when I love what I'm doing for the first layer. I'm gonna go ahead and take this over to the stove and heat set it for a little bit. We'll let the pan get hot. It's possible some of the colors may bloom more, but I'm happy because we have some of these lavender colors in here too. Oh, we got hot and the colors still look fantastic. I don't feel a need to edit them, but I actually am gonna turn off the heat, mainly because I'm gonna need to wait a bit of time to come back to this, and I don't want too much water to evaporate. So it'll cool down. I'm gonna have to reheat it. This sometimes happens schedule-wise, but we'll come back to this in a little bit. Oh man, it's time. We're heating up again. My plan is to bring the moss green, add the powder, work it through with a spoon, and then sort of on top or around it, bring in some olive, some mauve, maybe the forest green. That might be too teal, but depending on how things are feeling, I might bring that a little bit of that in if I'm wanting some more depth. And the hope is to kind of keep, like, I'm gonna sort of randomly place it and then fill in and trying to leave some like segments of this color. That's the plan. The colors may spread. We'll see what happens. I now have my respirator mask on. We're going to reduce the heat and go. Let's start small with our moss. Yeah, this is really pretty. I think it is a little bit too bright. It has some yellows in there that definitely I'm not feeling yet. Don't worry, I'm going to be doing more of it. But I'm just trying to get a feel for where we're headed. And it's a shame as I kind of bring to just like the side a little bit of this olive brown. So it's hard when I don't have the inspiration photo right next to me. Okay, I like those two together. And then the antique mauve. I'm thinking, I'm just doing a little test. Thinking of just doing some tiny little speckles. And I may layer some of the olive brown on top of the moss a little bit more. And, you know, the plan is to leave some like breaks in there. And so it's not perfectly repeating. That's why I'm not just sort of going across in lines. I'll put like some more here, do some there, and sort of do a placement like that. But I want to see what's going to happen here. So we'll stay zoomed in on this spot and I'll come back in 5 minutes. I still like it, and I'm seeing some more of the deepness and dimension come in there. It's funny, again, I'm not looking at the picture, but I'm enjoying what I have here, and I'm going to lean in and we're going to go. I'll see you on the other side. I went in with the moss green, layering, as I said, trying to, it's like the fissures, like the apple colorway I dyed in a live stream, trying to keep some of that base color visible. And then I brought in some of the olive brown next to the green. And then after I'd worked things through, I brought antique mauve and did some speckles. Now, so these colors are going to spread some and move some. So I do need to be aware of that. But we'll see just how much they've spread when we go ahead and flip things in a moment. I am now going to set a timer for 10 minutes. And there's a lot of trust the process going on here. I also tried to not have the brown on the same side all the way going through. These gaps in the middle are pretty big. We're going to have a lot of contrast in this yarn, but I didn't want to lose that beautiful dimension that we put in. And if we kept the sections between the colors too small, I felt like we might. So I'm liking where we are here. And after 10 minutes, we can flip and add more color onto the other side. And we'll talk about how I'll do that. 10 minutes later, and we're ready to flip the yarn. I am so excited by this. Feeling so inspired, which I love. Okay, now, this is interesting. We do have some color coming through, but not a lot. Ooh, okay, because normally if I saw a lot of spread and color, and you can see some hints of some greens, if I saw tons of spread, then what I would be doing on this side is trying to put green where I see green, and I will still do that, but, ooh, we don't have that much water in here. I think I'm gonna want to add a little more water. Here's about a cup of water and a second cupful of water that had 2 tablespoons of white vinegar in it. Okay, because I like there to be a little bit of water behind when I lift up the yarn. Things are still warm, but I'm going to give it a minute to heat up. And then respirator mask back on and we'll keep adding color. When I came in and was adding my green, again, I'm focusing on where there was green before, but I also am doing around half of the yarn with the green before I bring the spoon over, work it through, then go back for the powder to get more of that green. And I'm doing something very similar with the brown. This is because if I wait too long to work it through, then that color really is going to stay where it was placed, which is fine, but I want that spread. I want that like splotch, river bank kind of feel. Now I knew when I started the second side that I was probably going to need to flip the yarn at least one more time. But if I'm doing more flips, I also knew that A, I was going to wait 10 minutes before flipping, but B, that on the flips I was not going to need as much color. And I could really take each skein individually and decide, do I need more moss? Do I not need more moss? And I continued with this overall patterning until I was satisfied with our color coverage. It has been 10 minutes, and I think that the antique mauve speckles almost diminish from the like pink we have of the background a little bit, but I don't know. I don't care. I'm gonna eat this for 20 more minutes. I'm obsessed. Okay, I'm going to turn off the heat. We are going to remove the yarn to let it cool. I adore this colorway. Oh my gosh. There's always a moment when I'm unsure how I feel about something, but I love it. I feel like you don't see a lot of pink in the background. I wonder if that's going to disappear entirely, but I almost don't care because I think it's pretty. Now, speaking of pretty, our yarn mop is also very pretty. It did not have any acid in it yet, so I'm just bringing it over. You can see some color is going to come out, and I'm adding it in. If I did not do this, then we would have not a lot of white, but we would have more of the pastel colors remaining. But I'm going to let this heat for 30 minutes, and then we'll remove it. And thankfully, I remembered I do have to turn the heat back on because I had turned it off. A side note, I need editing Rebecca to remember that this combination of antique mauve, moss, and olive, was that the one I was using? Whatever those combination of those three deep colors I used is amazing, and I want to use that more often. But anyway, once our main colorway is cool, we'll wash it. This one will wash off camera, most likely. Sometimes I say that and then I end up washing it on camera. Our Marsh yarn is so pretty. Part of me, I think when I finally pull up the picture again, I'm gonna wonder if I should have been more saturated for everything altogether. Because I think for my self-critique right now, and again, I haven't looked at the image in a while, I think that the greens could be deeper and maybe the sky could be more vibrant too. But also, I almost don't care because I don't think I would have done this combination of techniques and colors had I not seen the photo. And you know what? The inspiration is almost as important as nailing your inspiration photo, right? Because if you're inspired to create something that is different from what you've created recently, that's a win. And you can pull inspiration from an image in so many different ways. Like I could have done just that watercolor base, which by the way, I have a whole other video that's focusing on like what I did at first here because I loved the effect. And so you have a lot of choices of how you want to put the colors together. And I don't know, it's fun to see how different people do it. And I would love to hear what you would have done with the same inspiration photo. But anyway, we're not seeing any color bleed. I'm gonna pop this through my spin dryer and hang it up to dry. All right, if I bring over our inspiration photo, I'm looking at it on my phone right now, and I feel like if I turn down the saturation on the photo, then I'm like, oh, I nailed it. The blue and the pink background needed to be more saturated, and I think that our the greens are closer, but there's more dark and depth in some of those trees and the shadows around the horizon. So I could have pumped that up a notch a little bit more. And so the way that I should have done that without sort of expanding where these green patches are is after I put the green on, I could have, you know, let it sit for a little bit and then gone back and added more powder in the exact same spots and sort of built it up. Because if I added too much powder in one spot all at once, then it likely would have spread more and overtaken things. Now, I think that this is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at those speckles. Like, the browns are super subtle. There's some areas where they overlap with the green, like right here. There's other spots where you can see more of the brown on its own. But because moss green breaks a little bit, like in here you can see some of the more yellow greens, because we have that separation and the different hues from the one color, that gives us a lot of dimension in there. I loved the softness we have in the background color. And I could do this in a way that is more intense while still maintaining some of the difference. I think that I went less saturated so I could get the softness I wanted, but I do think that I could do this with pumping up the volume a little bit. And in fact, with the leftover dyes, this had the lilac and the blues. I brought over another blue as well. So this is already more pigmented as a backdrop compared to the very pastels that we got on our colorway today. This is going to be its own episode of Dyepot Weekly, but just effect-wise, I was still able to achieve that softness and using the exact same technique that I used here. Now, there are some areas on the yarn where we have more like uninterrupted pastel areas. That doesn't bother me. I know that some of the placement will kind of average out. I'm just really, really happy with where we ended up. And I know that I said, I think that I'm gonna wish things were more saturated. Colors look more intense when they are wet than they do when they are dry. Now, there's some yarns where the act of drying makes a bigger difference in the color you see, like with silk blends and cottons. And then on wools, it does still make a difference. And so sometimes I need to push colors darker than I think I want, but it's hard when I'm seeing exactly the color I want on my canvas. But that's something that, you know, maybe we'll go for this exact colorway again, but try to turn up the saturation volume. You let me know if you want me to revisit this one. But again, it almost doesn't matter if I nailed the photo or not, because I love the yarn that I created. And I only created this colorway because I was looking at the photo and thinking about how I might achieve it. And I drew inspiration of the different layers and the colors from this photo. And so that, whether or not you look at it and say, man, you nailed it or you missed the mark, if you can draw inspiration from a beautiful image you find somewhere and create something that you love and are inspired by that, that is fantastic. And this brings me to a point I talk about often, but not often enough maybe. When you're looking for inspiration to create a yarn colorway, don't look at yarn that other dyers have created. Go to nature, books, movies, images, things that exist outside of the yarn sphere for your inspiration. That way you're not trying to reverse engineer someone else's colorway or something like that. Now, I don't mind if you draw inspiration from my yarn. I create videos with recipes and give you exactly what I use, so that way you could try to replicate it yourself. But that's something I'm inviting you to do. And so that's why it's okay to try to recreate something I've created. But just because I encourage that with my own work doesn't mean that other indie dyers and fiber artists also feel the same way. The main thing, especially if you decide to have a shop or something like that, is you want to put your own spin on your art, on your creations. And so that's just what I have to encourage you all to do. We have a lovely yarn mop today that feels like something I've created before. It gives me a little bit of a sense of deja vu. But even though this colorway is very different technique-wise from our main colorway, I do think you could blend it together in some kind of fade. And I'm still thinking, man, this combination of whatever, the brown, the green, and the antique mauve, those like 3 deeper colors, that's a combination I need to come back to. I feel like if I were to list the colorway we created as Sunrise on the Marsh, or like Blooming Marsh, or Marshy Morning or something, people would look at it and be like, oh yeah, I totally see that, even without seeing the photo. And yeah, I think that I created something that I love so much. And this is like a technique that I would love to play around with more in the future. And as I think I said earlier on, it's always a good sign when I do my first layer, when I'm planning to layer colors in multiple ways, and I love that first step so much that I hesitate about moving forward. And I'm sure that there have been times in the past when I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I stopped, but this is a time when I'm so glad, and this is a time when I'm so glad I continued moving forward. But you can let me know what you think down in the comments. Before we sign off, I want to take the opportunity to give a huge shout out and thank you to the ChemKnits Fiber patrons, including Don Jans, Jessica Parco, Tamara Sfanez, Bernadette Crum, and the rest of the names you see on the screen right now. Patreon is a platform where you can support all of the content here on the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel in direct ways, and there's a lot of fun perks, including early access to the Dyepot PS series, and depending on the levels, you can get advance notice to shop restocks and more. And you can also follow me on Patreon for free, and so then you could get an email, depending on your settings, you can get an email when I have a public announcement. That is the closest thing I have to an email list, so that is a great place to follow me. Patrons, thank you so much for all of your support. Now this video is going to be public on YouTube at the end of May, which means that the 2026 Spring Miniskein miniseries is around the corner. On June 15th, this special event will have a video each night featuring dyeing Miniskein sets, coordinated sets of 5 colors that are intended to work together. And you can pre-order some yarn that will be featured in one of those videos. There's a ton of different yarn bases in both fingering and DK weights. And your set will have 5 20-gram Miniskeins that were all designed to be used together in a project. There are add-ons as well. You can find more information about everything in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop, and I'll have it linked down in the video description.